Good to see you all this Wednesday evening. Well, thank you. It's good to be in town. Thanks, Brian. Okay, everyone. Well, good evening. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming. We have a few people visiting with us, so y'all are really at a disadvantage. This is not our regularly scheduled broadcast. We've been studying the book of Acts. Daniel's been leading that on Sundays and Wednesdays, but tonight is really, we're taking a pause from that study and talking about the gospel work that's happening and going on in the country of Ethiopia. I was there just a few weeks ago, and so this is in some way a report back. Excited to talk to you guys about the work there, share some experiences, some perspectives, and hopefully just encourage all of us in the gospel in a positive way. So that's our plan for tonight. I'll tell you, well, a couple things. One is, I don't necessarily have any prepared remarks, if you will. I put a PowerPoint together. There's a few slides, pictures, videos, and things like that. But I really had just an honest, open conversation. Please feel free to ask questions. It's a little bit different of a perspective over in Ethiopia. And so please feel free to stop me, ask any questions you want to know about as regards to the people, the culture, what we've been involved in, what I've been involved in, and happy to go through that. Make sense? Okay. It's funny, I was talking to Jamie about this, and normally she's always good to give, perspective and advice along the way and all that kind of stuff. And her one piece of advice for me tonight was, hey, don't lecture about stuff people don't care about. And so I thought, thank you. Okay. Like gospel work stuff? She goes, no. Like history of Ethiopia and all that kind of stuff. She said, you're probably the only one in the auditorium that likes that kind of stuff. So maybe that's good advice. I will try not to, I don't want this to be a lecture at all again, so please feel free to ask questions and have a discussion about it. Anything to start out with? We good? Okay. And again, if you're visiting with us, come back Sunday. We'll have a legit study in the book of Acts. Okay. So this was my fourth time to Ethiopia, East Africa, this beautiful country, beautiful people, very cool culture, a lot of good stuff happening as it relates to the gospel work there. I am what you call a creature of habit. 3 of the 4 times I've been to Ethiopia, I travel the same routes. I travel from Bush to London. I'm a United guy, so United from Bush to London to Heathrow, and then I hop on Ethiopian Airlines going to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. They're part of the Star Alliance and whatnot. I like this route just personally, I'll tell you, because it allows me to fly overnight for the 2 long legs. I'm not a big plane sleeper, but if it's overnight, normally I can get a couple hours in, and so this route is what I've done now many times. Ethiopia is in the Horn of Africa, on the east side of the continent. And Ethiopia, I'll tell you, is very unique in many different ways. One of the ways it's unique is in terms of I would say the gospel work, the receptivity of the gospel, the receptivity of Christianity in general. So if you look, Ethiopia is a stable country, really in the Horn of Africa around a lot of instability, quite frankly. You look at the bordering countries, South Sudan, Eritrea, Somalia, Djibouti, Kenya, kind of hot and cold sometimes. Those are generally countries that make headlines for not very good reasons. Ethiopia is different, though. It's the one kind of stable pillar country, democracy to a certain degree, in this Horn of Africa. You'll notice that Ethiopia is landlocked. That presents some specific challenges, import, exports. They don't have access to the sea, the Red Sea specifically. Eritrea and Ethiopia used to be one country. Eritrea gained their independence in the 1930s, I believe. And since then, it's been 2 separate places. Thank you, Phoenix. Said you're talking about history. Ethiopia, just again, quick facts here, moving on. It's about two times the size of Texas. It's got 4 times the population. So it's a very dense country, as a lot of countries in Africa are. One of the challenges, though, is there are 86 specific languages spoken in the country. Now, I'm not talking about dialects, like individual languages. It's a very tribal demographic area and whatnot. So the official language of Ethiopia is Amharic, but roughly less than half the population speaks it. And so quite literally, you could be in one village speaking a specific language, and 5 miles away, the other village, another town, speaks a completely different language as well. So that presents some challenges when it comes to communication and having translators, and sometimes the need to, if I'm teaching a class, sometime we'll have one translator translate it from English to Amharic. We'll have another translator translate it from Amharic to Aroma or Sidama or different languages and whatnot. So that is something you kind of have to get used to in terms of a cadence. I typically say a sentence or two, wait for the translator to start, and I try to pick up before he ends. And it's kind of a rhythm you have to kind of get into, which makes it interesting. The other one of the big challenges in Ethiopia is the literacy rate. As you can see up there, it's roughly 50%. So think about that when it comes to Bible studies, worshiping with Christians, evangelism, things like that. One of 2 people you're talking to, if you gave them a Bible, wouldn't be able to read it, which is very unfortunate. Now there's some other things, audio Bibles, things like that, but it's a challenge. One of the things, though, that's a very positive side is organically, that's due to generational stuff, that's changing. So again, young people in the country, which make up a big majority of the population, as in many countries in Africa, 73% of those individuals can read and write. So if you think about it, as generations come up, that literacy issue organically is going to help out in a very positive way. Make sense? Kind of high level. Daniel.
Maybe getting to this, but within the kind of the demographic of Christians, I feel like mostly older Christians, I feel like a lot of Christians in this age group mentioned, or is it spread out?
I would say it's fairly spread out, fairly diverse. I mean, there's a huge young person demographic. If you think that from an older generation, a mature Christian, that's probably the least, I would say. But that is changing as organically. Brian?
Similar question. I was wondering, is it predominantly a Christian nation?
Well, let's talk about that. That's great. That's great. That's the other thing that makes Ethiopia very unique. Again, think about it from a geopolitical perspective, kind of where it is in the Horn of Africa. It is the one Christian country in this area. Now, I think we all understand. Probably not New Testament Christianity as we would associate with it, but Christianity is the dominant state religion specifically. Brian? There is. There is. So let's talk about that in a second here, though. So, again, Orthodoxy is the dominant Christian faith. Now, again, here in the West, we don't, frankly, I don't think we have a lot of exposure to that kind of form of Christianity. Very similar to Catholicism. Well, that's part of it. Greek Orthodox is one version. There's also Russian Orthodox, Orthodoxy in general, I'd say. What we're talking about Orthodox here is Ethiopian Orthodox, not Greek, not Russian, things like that. Orthodoxy, if you're not familiar, there is a pope, there's priests, there's bishops, and they're very ritualistic. They have their own special feast and customs, which are different from the Catholic Church, but kind of in the same vein, if you will. But if you have Orthodox, again, the dominant religious presence there, and then Protestant, which incorporate, there's quite a bit of Pentecostal, a lot of denominationalism and whatnot. When you add those two numbers together, there's your above 60% from a Christian perspective. Islam has spread some, but it's been kind of blunted, I would say. It's been about a third of the population for the last many decades. It's not necessarily what we would say is a growing religious presence in the country. And to your point, Brian, there's various hypotheses or theories about why that is. One, and I think it, having read about the topic, I think it makes sense. One of the hypotheses around that is because Ethiopia has some very deep roots, going back to the Old Testament specifically, to Judaism, to the people of God, to the Israelites, both in terms of during the time of Solomon in the United Kingdom, but also the time between the Testaments, the Maccabean period of Israel and whatnot. There's a lot of cross-pollination, I guess, if you will. And then there's specifically, Brian, to your question, there's a fairly robust population of Ethiopian Jews. Somebody told me this, I didn't look this up, I got off memory here. I believe, though, there's more Ethiopian Jews in the state of Israel than there is in Ethiopia. Part of that is because the immigration between Ethiopia and Israel is very fluid and flexible, and so due to some of those maybe historical connection points, when Islam really spread across the Arabian Peninsula and spread all through the Horn of Africa, and really the 6th and 7th century, it almost went around Ethiopia, which is kind of interesting, I think. But okay, this is definitely a time Jamie would say move on, because I can talk about that a lot. Okay, so maybe it's a quick background. Jordan, why'd you go to Ethiopia? Why do you go to Ethiopia? No, it wasn't spinning a globe and pointing and it just so happened to be Ethiopia. This is actually a really cool story. So there was an American couple. In fact, I should have asked Steve. Did you know Faye and Dartha Starr? Did you have any connections with them? Okay. I couldn't remember though. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there was an American couple, Texan natives, I believe. Faye and Dartha Starr, back in the 70s. I think, to be clear, Faye is the man. Faye, I think he finished his doctorate, if I recall, and they were specifically looking for teaching positions at university levels abroad. That's something they were called to do and wanted to do, and a lot of that was driven, they wanted to be, from an evangelistic perspective, go do that. So he had, again, I believe it was a PhD, he just finished up. There was a New York Times wanted article, if you will, that said the Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia is looking to hire a professor. And so they jumped on that. They flew to New York, interviewed with some authority or somebody, I don't know, was offered the job on the spot, and then a few months later, they moved from Texas to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to teach at the university there. Very cool. It took some time, but they eventually found brethren, found Christians, converted folks from denominationalism, which was already there at the time, Pentecostalism was already there at the time, and began to work and worship with a local group of Christians in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, the capital specifically. Now, truth be told, they weren't there that long. This was the early 1970s. In 1975, there was a military coup happened, and the emperor, the last emperor, Haile Selassie, was deposed. All foreign nationals had to leave the country. So they left. They came back to the States. I think they went to Florida, but I'd have to look that up. But I believe Faye passed away not too long later after coming back to the States. And so Dartha kept in contact with friends and brethren that she had made over a handful of years in Ethiopia. And I think realized that, hey, there's some great opportunity to strengthen, encourage, uplift, support, teach the brethren there. And it took some time, but my understanding is eventually she kept poking and prodding and finally got 4 American preachers, this is in 1999, Harry Pickup, Melvin Curry, Bob Owen, and James Finney, to travel to Ethiopia, to travel to Addis, meet up with the Christians that she had met 2 decades before, if you will, which was very cool. And these 4 individuals, Harry Pickup, I believe, got really sick while he was there and cut his trip short. He came back to the States. And then James Finney, I don't think ever went back, but Melvin Curry and Bob Owen started going back. The issue was, from a logistical perspective, I believe all 4 of these men were in their 70s already when they made their first trip over there. And so, I think they recognize, again, a great opportunity, a great work that is possible in Ethiopia, probably due to those things I just mentioned, the demographics and Christian country, instability, and all that kind of stuff. And so they invited other people, hey, can you start doing this work, really is what it came down to. And there were several people involved in this, two people that are important, kind of how I fit in my story, David Holder and Randy Harshbarger. David Holder is the preacher at the Casselberry congregation up in Fort Worth for the last 30 years, where Jamie and I grew up. Him and Susan, very important to our lives. There's some local connections here. So Stephen Muffy's daughter, Ashlyn, married David and Susan's oldest son, Thomas. So there's some local connections. Thomas was here on Sunday as well. Randy Harshbarger has preached in the Nacogdoches Sterling Drive Church in Nacogdoches for 20 plus years. And so he's been, so really these two, along with others, habitually started making this trip over to Ethiopia. I will say there's also some Houston connections. Curtis Pope went over to Ethiopia a number of times. Timothy and Janice. Anthony Paul went over there once or twice, if I recall, as well. In fact, the first time I went to Ethiopia, Anthony Paul was there, now that I think about it. But anyway, the point being, people started going in a habitual fashion. Again, kind of maybe a similar problem arose. Randy's in his 70s now. He's been over to Ethiopia 44 times. There was a period of time he lived there for about a year. And then probably some of you know, David Holder suffers from Parkinson's pretty dramatically the last few years. And so a couple years ago, they called a meeting, let's call it, if you will. I went up to Fort Worth along with other people, and specifically they asked Daniel Lee, who is David's son-in-law, and myself if we would be interested in kind of helping that carry on the legacy, maybe is a better way to say it. I didn't put the name up here as well, but I should have. Ryan Harrison in San Antonio was the other one that's been involved in this. So again, probably too many details that you may not want to know, but that's kind of how it came about. Any questions? All right. Okay, so here's the objectives of, kind of the work and kind of what we try to do. Believe it or not, the objective that was set out, again, 25 years ago, really, was teach existing Christians, encourage existing churches. Now, that's not to say, hey, if people off the streets want to come in and hear, that's absolutely, right? But that wasn't the objective. The objective of going over there was not to, almost like a gospel meeting type format. I would say the proof is in the pudding. That's been a very successful endeavor, I would say, over the last 2 decades. It's the exponential factor, right? So, hey, if you could encourage, again, the churches, teach preachers, equip people who then go out in the local community and evangelize, a little more bang for your buck maybe is what we would say. And so that objective has not changed. It's been that objective for the last 25 years in this country, and that's what we currently do. We do a lot of young people workshops. Daniel Lee specifically leads a lot of that, where we bring young people in from the countryside or in the city and have 2- and 3-day workshops as it relates to that, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Daniel's really passionate about that and does a fantastic job in that sense as well. Brian?
As you go through this, you focus on
Yeah. Yes is the answer. It's a lot of first principles, New Testament Christianity. One of the big issues you kind of deal with is a lot of denomination, a lot of mission system stuff. I mean, like, I'll state the obvious. This is a third world country, and so there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of poverty. The mission systems have a draw because they are providing things, resources that people sometimes need for survival, if you will. And so there's a big draw there. I think one of the best things, what we try to do anyway, I'll say what we do, is First Testament principles, but then we do open dialogue for Q&A. I think that is really helpful. Now, to be fair, some of the questions you get, we would say, well, that's a little off the wall. Has nothing to do with Zacchaeus or something, whatever you're talking about, right? But a lot of questions about the workings of the Holy Spirit, having choirs, all that kind of stuff you would anticipate from a denominational perspective. Yeah. Okay, let me go back. I'm sorry. So this trip, I stayed in basically three major areas. I should have mentioned that. Maybe I didn't. Rainey and Harshbarger and I were together this trip for almost 3 weeks. A third individual came as I was leaving, so we overlapped a couple days. Mr. Ed Brand came. He is in his early 80s, and he came from another country in Africa. He goes to India. He goes to Africa multiple times a year. He is a traveler. Puts all of us to shame. I've got a picture of him in a second. But anyway, so Rainey and I spent our time, again, the capital city of Addis Ababa, Ambo, which is to the west of out in the countryside, to the west of the capital, and then south, Hosanna. Ambo and Hosanna are big cities out in the countryside, and from there we can go to different villages and things like that. Okay, so here's some people you may want to know, specifically folks that we spent a lot of time with on this trip. Mesfin, who I've spent many times with, you've probably heard me say his name in passing. Fantastic. He's a preacher in Addis at the Sephora congregation, probably the best translator. He's charismatic, a really good preacher and whatnot. Elias may have the most important job. He is the jack of all trades. Officially, he's our driver, which in that part of the world, that may be the most important job. Hands down. Roads in that part of the world, and specifically where we're at in the countryside and whatnot, roads are not for cars. In fact, there's very few cars on the road. Roads are for people, donkeys, goats, everything. How we don't hit and kill anyone or anything, it's really mind-boggling. You couldn't pay me to drive a car over there at all. So Elias, he's the driver. He's also a security man, takes care of everything. He's a nurse. He's a chef. Seriously, he is instrumental. Him and Randy are specifically close. They've been together for the last 15 years. Randy doesn't go anywhere in Ethiopia without Elias by his side. He and I have become good friends over the last 3 or 4 years. Zerahun is there. Zerahun is a gospel preacher in Addis. Probably my best friend over there. We spent a lot of time together. He and I spent some time in Israel a couple years back. We shared a hotel room for 10 days and whatnot. But him and his wife, Martha, and their kids. And then finally, Badassa. Badassa, I got to know really on this trip. Gospel preacher. These are all gospel preachers, I should say. Mesfin, Zerahun, and Badassa. But mainly Badassa and Mesfin were translating and whatnot on this trip. Here's a couple of pictures that I think just kind of accurately describe Addis. This is the capital city. So on one hand, you see, okay, well, look, there's cars, there's paved roads, there's some skyline stuff. I'm taking this from a Best Western hotel. And then next street over, there's a donkey. Happens all the time. So it gives a good feel for that. Sunday morning, I think I said this in one of the emails I sent out, if you guys read any of those. The Kotabi congregation, probably the oldest congregation in Ethiopia, worshipped with them there. It was very cool. I'd never done this before. The kids, after worship was done, we visiting and whatnot, the kids put on this like little program, if you will, and did some cool stuff. 2 of the young men gave short devotionals. Zerahun's oldest, Barkat, she organized a Bible Pictionary for us. We played, and that was always fun and whatnot. But just a good group of people. More of the Kotabi congregation and the Sephora congregation. We were at Zerahun's house having a late lunch. In the city, 40, 45. Countryside, depending upon some of the programs we did. Now, some of these villages come together, but there's 200-300 people. There's a picture in here I have at Jukara. We had 800 people. Now, again, that was multiple villages kind of coming together, but a much larger breadth of the demographic out in the village. You have to forgive me. We have it? Okay. I have some videos in here, but I thought they may be corrupted. Will you try to play that, Jeremy? If it doesn't work, I can sing in Amharic. Kidding. Okay, no problem. Hey, so this is interesting. The Bellaire Church is on the outskirts of Addis. I took this picture because that's the only building sign I've seen in the country. So again, things we take for granted. There's no building signs. There's no really street signs for that matter. But they have a building sign. I was like, wow, that is unique and pretty cool. Bellaire and Berhanyu preach at the Bellaire Church. The other Bellaire Church, Berhayu and Chala preach. And so Berhayu, the names are challenging there. This is another video. Does this one work? No, that's fine. This is on the countryside, Brian. So this is really cool. So there was about 800 people under this tent out in the middle of nowhere. So we were down by Hosanna. That's the big city in the countryside, and about a 3-hour drive from there in the middle of absolutely nowhere. We went down there. Actually, this is Lord's Day, I should say. Okay, no problem. There's a lot of singing and whatnot, which is really cool. One of the things that was interesting there is, I think you all appreciate this. So logistically, we were trying to figure out kind of what to do and how to do it. This was after Ed came in, so technically there were 3 of us. So they had a 3-day program in Jukra, and again, we knew there was going to be over 500 people there. So I offered to go down there with Mesfin, just he and I, and run the 3-day program there because logistically we were just going to be there a day, the Lord's Day. And so Randy, Mesfin, Zerahun, and I were talking about this and whatnot. It's very rural. I mean, there's no running water, no electricity, sleeping on the ground in a hut and whatnot. And, I told them, hey, I've done that before. I don't think that'd be a problem. But then Mesfin said, hey, there's a huge outbreak of malaria and yellow fever down there. And I was like, well, I'll see you Sunday. In addition, after I got there and left, we ate lunch in one of the huts here. This is where about 15 people were sleeping on the ground. And the night before, some guys were already sleeping in there, and one of the preachers went over to step over the threshold into the hut. A 5-foot black snake was crawling through the hut where everybody was on the ground sleeping. So, of course, I was like, goodness, was it poisonous? And Mesfin says, why? It didn't bite anybody. I was like, well, it seems somewhat relevant. But come to find out that 3-day program, they killed 5 snakes over that 3-day program. So, again, I was, looking back, I'm certainly glad I was not down there. Jeremy, let's move on to the next one, unless that one's... We'll move along here, guys. It's fine. It's fine. No big deal. We'll do pictures only. No big deal. All right. The days and the programs, again, they call them programs. Basically what that means is, hey, we get together, we study the scriptures. That's organically, that's just what it is. We normally start about 9 a.m. or so, depending upon how far we have to travel that morning. Sometimes later than that, if it's a long drive, a 3-hour Land Cruiser over not a road, making a road to get there and whatnot. But we typically have a couple sessions, we break. Someone from a village or a congregation or the town has us come over, eat some lunch at their home, which is humbling and gives you another perspective, of course. And then we go back for afternoon sessions. And so normally it's 9 to 5, 9 to 4, and then a long car ride home. So it is a little bit tiring, if you will. And again, as you can see, the driving, you just have to watch out to not hit anything. No one's going 70 miles an hour, I promise you, down these roads. That's Mesfin's father, Marcos, there on the other side. He's in his early 80s. He was really kind of in the Hosanna area, down where Mesfin's from, really the first gospel preacher. And he would quite literally, with his mule, walk up and over the mountains, going to village, teaching people about Jesus. Very, very cool stories he has. Some of the stories go that he would get lost sometimes, something about he's not that good with directions, but he would follow his mule because his mule would know where to go to the villages and whatnot. So I don't know if that's true, but it works out pretty good. There's Ed Brand with Zerahun and I. We're getting ready to go to, that's on a Sunday, we're ready to go worship with one of the congregations. That's Bellaire there. That red stuff in the middle, that is kitful. That's what they love. That is raw meat. And so you see on the side of the road, these beef, or mainly beef on this stuff, sitting out there all day, kind of keep the flies off it. And someone comes up, you get a knife, and you scrape it off, and you put some spice with it. And they love that stuff. Randy's tried it. I have not. I have not. Here's in one of the villages. Again, Messman's there on the left with me. Some of the preachers. One of the things, how to say this the right way, due to our nationality and the color of our skin, we attract a crowd. And it's, you give up all privacy when you step off the plane. And you can't do anything without someone following you around, staring at you, wanting to touch you, all that kind of stuff. Which there's pros and cons with that, of course. But one of the things they love to do is selfies. If I can get a selfie with an American, I mean, that's the pinnacle of what you could do. So, always good. It is interesting. Technology is a little bit different. Like this village we're at, there's no running water, there's no electricity. Every single person has a smartphone. They're all Androids, but everyone has a smartphone because you see the little solar charger out next to the hut. That's the charge of the phone. It's interesting. Bedassah, myself, Zerahun, some of the brethren from Ambo. This is the plot of land that was donated by one of the brothers there. In fact, the one right behind me, he is what we call an attorney. And so he has some resources. He donated this plot of land that the future church building is going to be built there. Building is cost of building and construction infrastructure is a huge challenge from a resources perspective. And so anytime one of those endeavors takes place, it's a really big deal. So they want us to come see this land. I saw warthogs for the first time in Ethiopia, which I typically don't see that. Okay, this is really cool. So out towards Ambo in a village, we're on our way to a preacher workshop. It's going to be a 2-day preacher workshop. About 40 preachers from kind of this area are coming together to do some studies. And we get word saying, hey, one of the local preachers has been teaching some folks there, and they want to be baptized. And would y'all come and view the baptism and everything like that? It's fantastic. Frankly, I'd never seen anybody baptized in Ethiopia. Again, we typically work with existing churches and whatnot. So very happy to do that. So we're on the way, and Zerahun tells me, he says, hey, they're probably going to ask you to baptize them, just FYI. Which is, okay, well, that's an honor and all that kind of stuff. And then I thought about it. I was like, we're in the countryside. And so I asked a question. I knew the answer. I said, is there a baptistry? And he said, no. There's this old creek you have to hike down to get to. And so I think he could tell my kind of, traveling 101 rural Africa, you don't get in lakes and rivers. I mean, it's just kind of you just don't do that as a Westerner and whatnot. So I was kind of like, oh my goodness, if someone asks, can I say no, right? And I guess he could kind of sense it. And so when I got there, no one asked me. And come to find out, I think he said no for me, I guess. But it's very cool. There's the creek. Again, we had to hike way down here. I showed this picture to Jamie, and she's like, because I asked her, I was like, yeah, man, I couldn't have said no. And she's like, you have family responsibilities. You don't need a brain-eating amoeba. Yeah, you say no. So I was like, well, okay. But very cool experience. 9 people were baptized. There's the church. This is a video, but we'll pass it and whatnot. My mom, I sent this picture to my mom, and she asked, what are those robes for, or where do they get those from? And again, this is rural Africa. Those robes were probably donated or found or holdover for somebody in the Lutheran church or something like that. Hey, it's baptismal robes that they had and put on. So there's a place that the government threw a lot of infrastructure and cash around, this ecotourism thing, out in the middle of nowhere. And so one Sunday after worship, trying to kill time, we decided to go out there, check it out. We had lunch there. You can see there, they put some money in this thing. And it's this big mountain over this lake. It's beautiful. I mean, again, out in the middle of literally nowhere. One paved road straight to here, one paved road straight back. It's kind of odd and whatnot. So you had to hike down quite a way. So Randy stayed with Elias up in the car a ways up. And so Bedassah, Zerahun, and myself took this boat. Dingy boat. I thought we were probably going to sink. Found out they don't know how to swim. I'm literally the only one in that boat that knows how to swim. But we made it. And I think I said this to somebody, best investment I ever made. Those boys down at the bottom of the lake, I paid the equivalent of $3 for a couple horses to take us back up the mountain. It was rough. Zerahun said we looked like 21st century disciples going into all the world preaching the gospel. Neat experience. More programs, more rural landscapes out in the countryside. Right, Daniel? Yeah, so thank you. I should have brought that up. So this time, I try to be specific and kind of a thematic or something like that. So this time, I preached on short sayings of Jesus, maybe some commonly misunderstood sayings of Jesus. Render unto Caesar's what Caesar's, all with man, with God, all things are possible. Things like that is what I stuck with, which seemed to be well received. They had a lot of questions, which I think is a good thing. This is a video, very cool video, but I'll just talk through it. So I will say, again, a couple maybe closing remarks here, if we don't have much time left probably. My experience has been, going here is very uplifting. Again, it gives you another perspective about how people live, situations they're in, struggles they have. It's a very encouraging effort, knowing that, hey, there's people 8,000 miles away worshiping God, serving Jesus, just like you and I. First New Testament Christianity, if you will, which is very, again, uplifting, encouraging, and again, there's a huge opportunity for those reasons I mentioned about continuing the gospel work in this place, in this country. It's unique, I think, compared to some other things. One of the tough things, though, see if they get that going. This is about 300 people. Here we go. One of the cool things is the singing there is really cool. What normally happens is people, they sit like a horseshoe. The kids are up front, the women are generally behind them, the men are at the back, and the village elders typically are on the sides. One of the things that's really weird is they put us always up front looking out. So everybody's looking at you. I mean, even like when Randy's teaching, I'm sitting here next to him, sitting down, just looking at everyone, and vice versa, which is kind of interesting. But that's the general kind of demographic of makeup. One thing is also interesting here in the countryside. You don't see it in the city, but in the countryside, for example, there's a song leader. He announces a song. Hey, what we're going to sing, and a lot of it's, I think I call it antiphonal singing, but I know that's wrong, Joanna, wherever she's at. Where basically someone says something and it's repeated back and forth and whatnot. But in the countryside, normally there's a song leader. He announces what's going to start, and then someone in the crowd, typically a lady, starts the singing. From a musical perspective, it's interesting. The ladies carry everything from a musical perspective, at least in the countryside anyway. Okay, but in closing, what I was saying was, it is tough seeing people, again, brethren, in some fairly difficult, situations. With famine, these are subsistence living folks, Christians. They grow and raise crops and animals and things like that. One thing I was going to mention, on this trip in particular, several individuals here gave me some financial support to pass on to the individuals there. So everywhere I go in Ethiopia, the first thing, after we speak, typically an older gentleman, one of the elders of the village or the preacher gets up and says a thank you. Sometimes they're short thank yous, but mainly they're very long thank yous, almost like another mini sermon, if you will. They thank you for coming. They thank you for the brethren praying for them on their behalf. They thank you for if there's been any support during a famine or things of that nature. And they always say, please tell people how much we love them, how much we appreciate them, and tell them to keep coming back to visit us. And so I pass along that blessing and that message to you all. Again, in regards to, some of you guys gave me some funds to deliver and whatnot. While I was there was some individuals, countryside preachers, that were looking for some regular support. And so with those funds you gave me, I committed and gave to them for some evangelistic support. It's interesting, a dollar in that part of the world goes a long way. Steve, you brought this up on one of our Zoom calls. I think the catalyst behind it, so thank you. So right now, the new support, there was 5 individuals, countryside preachers needing support in U.S. dollars. That runs about $200 a month, which is interesting. And keep in mind, a lot of these families have 6, 7, 8 kids, and that covers everything they need, which is a huge blessing. So again, thank you for sharing in that cause, and obviously thank you personally for myself from encouragement, prayers, looking after my family while I was gone. This was one of my longer trips. I was there just about 3 weeks. I think I told a few guys this. That was too long. I don't plan on staying that long. Again, 2 weeks, maybe a little bit more is kind of the sweet spot, I think. I'll leave you with this. Shameless plug here, I guess. So my plan, Lord willing, is kind of what I somewhat committed to, I guess, is I plan on continue to go to Ethiopia every 2 years. That's kind of the regular cadence I had set forth and whatnot. Again, this is my 4th trip. So Lord willing, barring other things that could change, obviously, I plan on going in 2027. So here's the ask. It's a great work. It's encouraging. It's tiring. It's a long way. You got to get a lot of shots. But if you want to go, just let me know. On a serious note, yeah, there's always opportunity. There's always somebody to teach. There's always some program. There's always some village. People are hungry, eager to listen to anything gospel related. And so if that's something you would like to get involved in, you have my number. I'm planning on going in 2027, so love to have you on board. Okay, Brian?
Quick question. How do you guys coordinate construction materials? Do you have a plan?
We do. Thank you for bringing that up. Typically, I ask Zerahun, hey, what are you thinking? what should I study, or what should I bring in maybe a month or 2, or maybe a little bit longer before that? Normally, when it's 2 of us, like Randy and I have been together now 3 times in Ethiopia, I'll do something Jesus-focused, New Testament. He'll do the book of Ezekiel or something Old Testament related, or vice versa. The time before this time I was in Ethiopia, I specifically did Old Testament connection points to Jesus. Zerahun mentioned that would be helpful to make people see the big picture view of direct prophecies, foreshadowings. How do some of these Old Testament characters and their stories point us to Jesus? And so, yes, it is somewhat coordinated and directive, I would say, but there's not a book or anything like that. Zerahun, the Ethiopian brethren, we asked them, hey, what do you think would be appropriate and needed and whatnot? Again, we're not the only Americans that go there. There's groups of handfuls of Americans that go throughout the course of a year, typically 3 or 4, typically. So the last thing we want to do is all preach on Nehemiah or something, So, anything final? Hey, thanks for the time. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for your interest. Thanks for the prayers. Thank you for Daniel for giving up one of his class periods. It's a big deal to him, obviously, and to us. But again, thank you for all the support and encouragement, and God bless. Yep.